Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Messaging Maven. This time, this is the last event of the year. We actually recounted with Katria that it's been 12 events this year, 12 editions of this series. And for the last one, we decided to very much jump on the bandwagon as well and talk a little bit about RCS. So today I'm joined by one of the people who's been spearheading the efforts regarding RCS in our company. That's Marko. So Marko, tell me a little bit about who you are, say hello to the guests, and welcome to the series.
Yeah, hello. My name is Marko. I've been in Messente for about 5 years, and then I started out with a long technical background, but in the recent few years I've been focusing on these research and development topics in Messente, and so I've had the fun job of being able to research, fund up new products like RCS, and actually play around with these.
So, you've been pretty hands-on with everything relating to RCS and not just RCS in and of itself, but also rich products as a whole. So, today's topic is RCS in 2024 and how does the new update influence the end users, aka end customers, etc. Let's go over it for anybody who's here for the first time. What's the update then? What are we talking about? Why did RCS become such a hot topic at the tail end of 2023?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe to kind of set the stage a little bit, like a quick overview of what RCS itself is. And there's this RCS RBM combination and like an alphabet game that everybody likes to play. So RCS is like a basically a technical replacement for SMS. Like SMS is over 30 years old. It's technically really outdated. It's insecure. It has lax features, and RCS is like the industry's replacement to SMS. And RBM part of it is the business messaging side of it that basically runs on RCS technology. And to kind of understand what's happening right now and why we're talking about right now, we kind of have to go back a little bit, which is that I think RCS came to be about 15 years ago, and initially it was an operator's it's an operator's initiative within like a GSMA's non-profit organization, and they were basically came up with these new standards, new technology, and then nothing happened because it's really difficult to get 1,000 independent operators to implement a single standard without like giving any financial motive for them. So it's apparently doesn't take you very far. So some time ago, a few years ago, Google thought, okay, this is actually a really cool thing and started pushing for it. So Google started investing into it, integrating it into Android, helping operators with the tools and stuff like that. And that got us a little bit further, but still RCS is still like not very much used, not very well known. And what happened in November essentially is that Apple also decided to basically jump on board of RCS. So far, Apple has been really has stayed away, really stuck on their iMessage, didn't really want to open up the platform to anybody else, didn't really want to have this interoperability between platforms. And this, so the announcement that they will actually join in with RCS technology and actually start supporting it in iPhones as well, that came to the industry like as a really big surprise, and nobody really expected it, including myself. And why does it? Yeah, essentially, why is it so impactful right now? Is that it's basically gave RCS some new energy in a way that it's now people maybe don't think about it as a Google product, which basically was the perception of it since Google was pushing it. And if there is some cross-platform thing, then it could actually be a good replacement for SMS.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's a part of this whole kind of marketing campaign of blue bubbles versus green bubbles and everything else around sort of associated with that. So there was a whole marketing effort from Google's side to actually push Apple towards RCS and actually get them to integrate that into as well. And of course, the big question is, outside of why is this important is what are the motivations behind that, and where is this actually going to get to by the end of it? There's so many questions to sort of delve into, but But you talked a little bit about why it's important and the fact that, this enables cross-platform interoperability. That is a very nice sort of blurb. What does that actually mean? What does it mean for businesses? What does it mean for clients? Why is it important that Apple joined the RCS bandwagon?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Well, if we think about SMS for a second, and compare SMS to other messaging applications like WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, Signal, whatever, then those are those are like company specific. Like there is one company that owns WhatsApp, they deliver WhatsApp messages, and they basically control everything. With SMS and with RCS as well, the idea is that one entity doesn't actually control the whole thing, and because you basically get more transparency, you can get more options, and also like if basically more
Yeah, sort of more options in a way, or the idea that the market condition isn't completely revamped, or the functioning of a communication flow isn't completely revamped because of the whims of one singular company, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because with SMS right now, it's like basically the only channel in the world that is basically accessible in every device in the world. And with WhatsApp and other platforms, this is not possible and won't be.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea being that, RCS being something that can become a platform level thing and be a platform level thing rather than just, an app you have to install, et cetera, et cetera. It's of course a lot more complicated because it comes down to also user behavior and the fact that certain markets are already so heavily into WhatsApp, for example, that it's kind of a moot point to be platform level if 90% of the market is already using a platform. So changing because the other 10% can be on board is a lot less likely than the other 10% just coming fully on board with that platform as well. So there's a lot of things to think about there. But 2024, what does this news actually bring about? What's the impact that it's going to have on the industry? What do you think?
Yeah, that's I guess it's very open right now, because I think the biggest change that happened with this announcement from Apple was actually just like new energy inside RCS, because nobody actually knows what Apple's motivation behind it is. There, like with one argument, Apple was basically adding this channel to basically comply with European Digital Markets Act, which is kind of trying to push these gatekeeping companies to have some interoperability and open up their gates a little bit. And that was also going to happen. Apple basically saw that happening to them and iMessage as well, and they kind of jumped ahead of the thing. But if it's just a compliance issue, and they don't actually have any intention of supporting RCS features entirely, or actually making this a user-friendly service for people, then I don't think like the Apple's part of it might not actually change much. And then it's just that the new energy, new company, RCS came into the kind of like the picture again. Operators started to talk about it again. Companies started to hear more about it, which means that the current version of RCS that currently runs just gets growth boost here.
Yeah. So I agree with that. It's interesting as well. Yeah.
Maybe another point of it could be that Apple actually sees that this is useful to them, maybe because of WhatsApp competition, and like Apple can't compete with WhatsApp alone, maybe. And in that case, they might have a bigger motivation to actually make this into a useful product.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about as well, is where does that motivation come from? And I keep on coming back to the event we had, Mobile Ecosystem Forum's omni-channel event at the end of the year. Shout out to Mef. And the point where Google presented this idea, and the representative from Google said very specifically to the question, RCS is coming to Apple devices, is RBM coming as well? And, that's the business-to-business version of that. Is this something that businesses are going to be able to tap into, not just consumers? And the answer was, of course, obviously cryptic, but the answer was that they have committed to installing or supporting the version of RCS, the universal protocol that also includes RBM. So technically it's there. And I've also been, one of those people who puts his tinfoil hat on and starts to consider the idea of, could this possibly be a move to team up with Google to fight Meta, mainly because Meta and WhatsApp are seen as the next dominant force within the messaging industry, and taking a large portion of it. So could this be a retaliatory measure because Apple's iMessage in its business messaging form hasn't really taken off, RCS hasn't really taken off, but the combination of an ability to do it cross-platform at a very simple level could still give them a large share of the market, while I still think that there is a pretty large inevitability that certain markets are going to be WhatsApp first. So the idea of a singular ubiquitous channel is probably not going to stick around for a very while. At least in my opinion, I think it's going to go down that sort of very saturated, not saturated, but very sort of fractured. Every market has its main channel type of a route as compared to what it is right now.
Maybe with A to B and Apple, like Apple's approach to A to B iMessage, for example, has already also been very different than, let's say, SMS or RCS, where it's really tightly controlled what companies can actually send messages to, and it's clearly opt-in, which means the end device needs to message the company first. And if Apple goes this standard RBM route with RCS, then that's also change from their perspective in their kind of iMessage strategy. So that's also interesting.
Yeah, and there's always that question of, does Apple want to allow companies that are registering through Google to be able to send messages to their users? So it's a whole heap of hodgepodge questions that are going to be coming into this. And as per usual, it raises more questions rather than answers. But switching gears for a second, the question is, should companies go for RCS right now? What are the benefits? Why should you use it right now as compared to just using SMS?
I think it really depends on the market you're working in, because if you actually look at some of the markets like Germany, Spain, India, UK, then RCS has a really high reach rate actually there in these countries. And with the added features, like let's just take some basic features like your company logo on the device, maybe some pictures, maybe some company colors, not even going to the fancy features, then that's already a better user experience for the end user, either from the trust perspective or just the content side. So I don't really see any reason why not to use these channels where it's possible. But there's also a gap within, like, where is it available and where is it not, because it's still, I think, not supported for, I think about 15% of operators worldwide just support it. And some of it is supported by Google themselves, but like most of the world is still not covered by the features. So it really depends on the market, but if it's available, then I see it as definitely an upgrade to SMS, if not more.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing for me as well, is that the success of RBM rather than RCS, right? It's super easy to convince those two, but RCS being this P2P channel and then RBM being this business channel, RCS has a pretty nice reach in terms of how many people you can reach. I'll draw a very simple example. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, you can send RCS messages. Can't send RBM messages because the operators don't support it, and Google hasn't opened it up in guest mode, which is sort of their free version of doing so, which means that this market isn't a place where you can use that channel as a business to communicate with your customers. And realistically, the biggest sort of factor hampering, I think, the functioning of RBM or even RCS, or having that adoption from companies, isn't actually the platform itself, it's operator support. It's the operator still not sort of getting behind that. And also another thing, to an extent, Google not getting behind that and not opening more up in guest mode. I had a discussion at the MEF event with Wahid Adam, who works on the African markets and on the African continent, and his main sort of feedback was that there are like 2 markets where RCS is available in the entirety of Africa, which is a mobile first continent. We're not talking market, we're talking continent. How many people and how many users are there, and they're not really investing time and effort into a place where it could be incredibly applicable. So, this very swiftly rolls us from the benefits, what are relatively obvious because it's a much better customer experience, it's much more trusted customer experience, and has bigger value, and that transitions us very smoothly into, so what are the downsides?
Yeah, I think the obvious downside is that the reach is, like I said, RCS is available on devices. I think Google reported over 1 billion devices where RCS is available, the RBM is not. So the first obvious thing is that it's not that available everywhere. And for the second downside, maybe this is a little bit like an implementation question, that RBM is still fairly new technology. It's still being adopted. Still, people are trying to figure out how to support it. So it's not fully clear yet everywhere. Like, what is the pricing model, for example? Sometimes pricing is more expensive than SMS. In some cases, it's cheaper than SMS. In some cases, it's like also with WhatsApp. It's compared to WhatsApp, there are very different numbers there. And depending on the country, the onboarding might also not be as smooth as some other places. It really depends on the operators, because some operators have done this more than others, and thus have figured out how to actually do this efficiently. So onboarding is a little bit more complex than, for example, SMS, but in terms of functionality side or that part, then I actually don't really see that many downsides myself. How about you?
I guess the interesting thing about it for me is especially that sort of maybe a lack of clarity, in a sense that one operator prices it one way, one operator prices it another way. How do you price basic RCS, which is, without all of the bells and whistles and carousels and everything else, which is usually referred to as branded SMS, which is probably the best way to sort of describe what it is. And then, what's the difference between when you want that rich content and what you need to get behind it, and the procedures, etc. So it is this thing where every operator sees it differently, and every operator also understands it differently. Is it the next iteration of SMS, and should it be priced similarly, or is it a premier product and hence you put a premium price on it? But then if you're putting a premium price on it, what do you compare it to? People compare it to WhatsApp. If WhatsApp is cheaper, why would you use it? Right? So there's so many questions related to that, so many questions that actually bring up the obvious sort of reasons why it hasn't taken off, while technologically and from the perspective of usability being better, even up to the point where, even, pulling back the curtain from our side a little bit, and we've had trouble getting companies to switch over to RCS or RBM rather, because autofill is missing. Like, it's such a small thing. Like, when you get an OTP, it's supposed to immediately sort of jump into that box, and with SMS it usually does, and you have this great customer experience. And there are a lot of companies that are very, very careful with their CR. And if they see that there is something that can even marginally negatively affect their CR, then they're not going to be going with that new technology until they can at least guarantee parity on the basic level with SMS in terms of conversion. And then they're willing to look at the additional benefits. But you at least need to be able to offer parity, and then you can do everything else on top. And there are a lot of businesses that simply don't want to take the risk in changing out their sort of communication platform for that. But, how and in what cases should businesses use RCS?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the conversion rates, because there is the opposite of it as well. Like, okay, one side is that if with OTPs, the conversion rate can actually be lower because of the missing functionality. But on the other side, what the industry has reported now with the data we have is that the conversion rates for marketing messages are 20 to maybe sometimes even 40 times higher than with SMS. So there is a huge potential if it's used correctly. And coming to the rich messaging part of it, like one version, the basic RCS, which is basic RVM, which is just like SMS type of content. If you actually go to the images, buttons, videos, and stuff like that, conversations even, then the companies themselves can also influence the conversion rate. Like, for example, if you have a conversation with an inbound customer who is coming to ask something about the product, or you're sending a marketing message, they respond, you get into this conversation with them, and that could change the conversion rate significantly, or just how customers see how you, basically the perception of you.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It's this idea of, transitioning into conversational commerce in a way, and getting to a position where you're having active moments with your clients when you're trying to build the client relationship in and of itself. The tool itself gives so much more options to be able to do that effectively, which of course then leads us back to the original questions. How should you use it today? Maybe OTPs aren't the ideal use case, and maybe you should focus on customer care, promotional messages, transactional messages where you would require the client's input to a degree. So making it more about creating a more rich customer experience rather than being an out and out immediate replacement for SMS in its basic functionality. Especially if you're afraid or had the data to back up that it actually decreases your CR to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Good. So my favorite topic is always fraud. What about RCS and fraud?
That's a very good question. So it depends on how do you compare it to. Like if you compare it to SMS, then RCS is considerably more secure. Like if you just think about like person-to-person messaging with RCS, then that is right now encrypted, end-to-end encrypted. Google can't really read your messages. I don't know what happens if Apple joins the infrastructure, because Apple said they won't support encryption initially, but we don't really know what's going to happen there and how will this work out. When it comes to business messaging, RBM part of it, then this is not encrypted right now, and basically there is still a potential for somebody to read your messages. But I think the main security actually comes from the business verification and validation, which is currently done very much differently than with SMS right now, where Google is taking a huge. Google has put in place like proper processes to actually validate the businesses. Operators are doing the same right now, and there's just not that much access to being able to spoof somebody's sender ID, for example, because this is being validated by the operators and Google. There is some fraud in this person-to-person RCS messaging, where somebody can actually just get an RCS phone and just send you fraud messages. But this is again different with SMS, because with SMS there isn't that much in the way of the fraudsters. It's basically I type a message and it ends up in someone's phone, and that's all. But with RCS, Google is really tightly integrated into this whole process, and Google has taken steps that are significantly better than we have seen from operators with SMS. So Google, right now, since Google is controlling a lot of this content that is being sent out with RBM, then I think it's safer, but not entirely safe.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I mean, the attempts of scamming that have been made public to us, or that we've seen, is the classical, I'll add you to a group chat and then name that group Deutsche Bank and try to send you something from there. But Google is surprisingly efficient at their ability to actually catch those attempts and actually drive it down in a way, the put it into the spam box or trash box or wherever else they actually put it, so, or flag it in some other way. So they are more capable for sure compared to, say, a lot of the operators. There are operators who do a good bit of work in scam prevention and have a lot of rules, but there are a lot of markets where it's pretty much a free for all, do what you want kind of scenario.
Google has a really good background with scan filtering with emails, so they can basically bring that insight into the business messaging world as well. So yeah, they have a lot of knowledge that the operators just don't have for obvious reasons.
Agreed. So we've talked a little bit about what it is. We've talked a little bit about our expectations into 2024, and realistically, it being we'll see. We'll see what happens. Use it, but we'll see what happens. It's a bit of a free for all. But for sort of closing thoughts, any tips, suggestions? What would you do in 2024 in regards to RCS and RBM?
Yeah, I would definitely try it out. Like I said, we have seen huge conversion rate increases in the industry so far. And if you're working in a market where RCS support is available, it has enough users in there, enough operators in there, then I don't really see why not to try it out, even with these even with these SMS-like messages. I don't think everybody should jump into this rich text messaging as the first thing, because that actually requires more thinking through of what is the content, what are the images and stuff like that. But just getting some better, adding some more trust to your messages with RCS, I think that's definitely beneficial. And there is not really that much to lose with this.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing really much to add from my side. Let's go to questions. Let's take a few questions, see what's up, see what's on people's minds, and then draw this shindig to a close. Let's see what we have. So, Martins, do you believe RCS might replace regular SMS in the future? Well, the future is a very broad term. Completely replaced to 100%? No, because Telegram still exists. People still use text message, not text messages, but rather Telegram messages like telex and stuff like that. So that's still a thing. So will it go away 100%? No. Do I see it decreasing by a substantial degree? Yes, but again, to a degree. I think there are still use cases where it'll take a fair few years for the dust to settle in the rich communication game until a dominant player or the dominant players will be established to a degree where you can get 100% market coverage without needing SMS as a fallback. When that happens, I think yes, it will happen, but I don't see it happening in the next 5 years because it hasn't happened in 15, and I don't think it will happen in the next 5. We will have a very strong idea in the next 5, and volumes will definitely decrease in terms of growth over the next couple of years. But at the same time, don't think it'll die out anytime soon. What about you, Marko?
Yeah, completely agree. Nothing to add to that.
Cool. Let us see. Vikrant, what is your prediction on RBM in Apple in A2P? My own prediction, my own tinfoil hat agreement or thought, I think the move from Apple is to fight Meta's potential dominance. I think they can see the writing on the wall, and I think that they will take a fairly active role in also giving RBM capabilities as well and driving this thing forward. I also believe it will be an absolute mess in terms of how this interoperability works, registrations, everything else. It will become a complete cluster that we will have to sort, but we will sort it. Marko, what about you?
Yeah. I think if Apple realizes what kind of a mess they got themselves into, then they maybe might want to rethink their position. But I think initially, I'm hoping that RBM will be on Apple and they will be a good partner for RCS.
Yeah. It's this again. Let's see. I just think that it has potential. Let's just hope they double down on it as well. Okay, let's take one more. From an ice, is RCS better than SMS? Well, yes and no. It depends on what you need it for. Do you need rich communication with pictures, carousels, nice buttons, a trusted brand profile? Then absolutely RCS is better. Do you need something that reaches everywhere? No, not even close. SMS is still kind of the king in terms of ubiquity, deliverability, and reach compared to RCS. RCS is simply the next iteration of the channel.
RCS has some benefit there where it can be also sent over Wi-Fi once it's set up on the device, which is something SMS can't really do.
True. It has a lot of benefits. It has potential. But if you really, really, really need something to get there, for sure, in terms of like an OTP, SMS is still a safer bet, at least for now.
Absolutely.
Let's do one more. From Martin, is there any investments or upgrades needed on MNO level to support RCS as a technology? What about you, Marko? Do you know anything more about this in depth?
Oh, there is a lot of multiple ways that MNOs can solve this. I think there are basically 4 different models that MNOs follow, and this is being done right now, which is like one is that MNO and builds the infrastructure entirely themselves. They follow the standard, and they are basically separated from Google, from everybody else entirely, and just communicate over the standard that is agreed. Then there are more mixed models of this, where Google has basically built infrastructure for MNOs that MNOs can then use, and basically license. I don't know how this is licensing. If there are any licensing fees, these are being licensed somehow. But then essentially it's a Google-owned infrastructure. Then there's the third level, which is that MNOs don't do that much. They basically do pricing. They basically do agreements, maybe company verifications. But the infrastructure is essentially provided by Google, and in that case, MNOs don't actually have that much upfront costs, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And then there's the fourth model, which is that Google offers the service entirely themselves, ignoring the operator completely, and that is called guest mode right now. And Google is planning to not have guest mode and have operators do it themselves, but this is, I think, not going to happen very soon.
Yeah, and ultimately, if they have to build it themselves, if they have to put the work in, it's going to be expensive. Guest mode costs nothing for them in terms of investments, but also costs them a lot in revenues missed out on if RBM starts to be used under guest mode and traffic is transitioned from SMS over to RBM, then you're looking at a fair bit of missed revenue. So yes, there's a different level of costs or investments that MNOs need to make this thing work for them. On a minimal level, at least there's the personnel costs and the internal processes cost. At a high level, it's the entire development and technology costs of building the entire thing themselves, which is why a lot of companies have, operators have gone with Google, because it just makes more sense. Cool. In conclusion, as we've said, use it, try it, play around with it. We'll see where it goes, and I guess we'll keep you updated. Thanks, Marko, for sticking around, and to everybody else, thank you for being with us for the entire year. Thank you for all of the events, and see you again next year, not next week. Ciao.
Thank you very much. Bye.